Hello, everyone, and welcome to lectionaryq. I'm Dennis Sanders, the pastor of First Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in St. Paul, Minnesota. And welcome to another edition of this podcast. The Q, as I always say, stands for questions, because that's what I try to do here every week, taking one or more of the scriptures from the Revised Common Lectionary for the upcoming Sunday and asking some questions. So these are, we are looking today for the fifth Sunday in Lent, which is March 23rd, 2026. I almost wanted to say 2025. And actually, I have that wrong. It's actually going to be March 22nd, 2026. And so we are looking at John 11, 1 through 45. So this is the third of a row of really long texts in the Gospel of John. The week before, unfortunately, we didn't do a podcast for that one, but that was looking at the man born blind in John 9. And before that, we looked at the woman at the well in John 4. And this one, if you are someone that catches the title sometimes of the podcasts are kind of titles of music, and the one that came to mind is it's kind of a rare one. It's from the kind of, I want to say, proto-punk or punk group or new wave group, British group, Bauhaus. And I remember hearing this song. A friend of mine in college who was very much into Bauhaus listened to it, and one of the songs was Bela Lugosi's Dead. And part of the song sings that and then says, I'm dead, I'm dead. And I was thinking about that a lot because, of course, this passage deals with death. It deals with Lazarus being dead and how Christ responds to it. We're going to do this a little bit different. I'm trying to also do a video devotion for my church. So I'm going to include that and then ask the questions. And so without further ado, here is the kind of reflection on John 11, and then we will move over to the questions. Hey, everyone. This is Pastor Dennis Sanders from First Christian Church of St. Paul, Minnesota, and here is this week's devotional. And we're looking at John 11, 1 through 45, so it's a long reading. But I was thinking about it as I've been preparing for the sermon, and I've never really understood the saying, God helps those who help themselves. If God is only going to help you after you've kind of done all the hard work, then why even bother talking to God? It kind of reminds me of that really early episode of The Simpsons where Bart is asked to give the grace before dinner, and he says, Dear God, we paid for all this stuff ourselves, so thanks for nothing. I think that saying really comes from the idea that God isn't going to do all the hard work. So, you've got to put in some effort yourself, a little bit of, I guess, some oomph, some sweat equity, and then God's going to come in and finish the rest. And that sounds nice. That very much sounds nice, especially in our society, but what happens when a loved one is sick? Or if that loved one dies, then that whole do your part and God will do God's part doesn't make any sense. Now, in the text, in John 11, Jesus, of course, raises Lazarus from the dead. This is his friend. And, to use that phrase that we use these days, I was today years old when I realized the meaning of the name Lazarus. Lazarus is the Greek version of the Hebrew name Eleazar. And Eleazar means God has helped. Now, two commentaries that I was looking at stress that this name was not used in this story intentionally. I mean, yeah, that's true, but you can't ignore that what this name means in the light of the whole story. Here you have Mary and Martha, Lazarus's sisters, They are weeping. They are in grief because they've lost their brother. And they had even sent word to Jesus, hoping that Jesus would do something. And he didn't come up enough quickly in time. By the time he came, Lazarus was dead. And then you have Jesus coming in, and Jesus gets emotional because, of course, this was his friend. And he tells the sisters that he is the resurrection and the life, and he is going to come and wake Lazarus up from the dead. God has helped because that's what Jesus does. But God and Jesus doesn't wait for Mary and Martha to help themselves. They don't have that power to raise the dead. They didn't even have the power to heal their brother. They had to totally rely on God to do the impossible in their lives. God doesn't wait for us to do something in order to help and save us. God comes to the parts of our lives that are dead, just as dead as Lazarus, in order to bring them back to life, to make us whole. We don't have to do our part. And the other thing is that sometimes when God has helped, it doesn't always come in the way that we want or in the time that we want. But know this, it does happen. God does help. I'm reminded of that old gospel tune, "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep." The version that I remember the best is by the a cappella group Take Six. And they use this passage for that song. The song, the old gospel tune, is pretty simple in its meaning. Don't give up hope, because God is in the business of doing the impossible. It is God that has helped us through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. That work didn't just happen long ago. It's not something that we just like to remember now and then, but it happens now. Creating life where there was death. God has helped. God has helped us. God has helped you. God has helped me. And God helps. You don't need to say the rest of that old tire phrase. That's it for this week. Hopefully I will be back next week with another devotional on Palm Sunday. So take care. Bye. All right. So here are the questions for this week. So in verses 9 and 10 of John 11, Jesus talks about walking in daylight and walking at night. What do you think he means by this? Question 2, in verse 17 and then again in verse 38, we learn that Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. What's the significance of that time period? Question number 3, both Mary and Martha say the same words to Jesus when they meet him. How are their responses and how they say that different? And number 4, what is the significance of unbinding Lazarus? All right, so those are the questions for this week. Do those bring out any other questions? And what are your answers to those questions? As always, if you have a question or want to respond, you can send an email to lectionaryq@substack.com. That is it for this episode, and we will be back. I will try to be back next week with Palm Sunday. It's hard to believe we've moved by that quickly into Lent. See you next week. Again, apologies that this is coming rather late. Life of a pastor, but I did want to get this one out. I hope that these questions will continue to open scripture to you, that God will speak to you, and that you will be able to share the good news of the gospel. I'm Dennis Sanders, your host. Take care, everyone. I'll see you next week.